A special thank you to each of our subscribers who make this channel possible. Here's today's story. In a significant development for the families of the Bali Nine, the final 5 members of the group have been brought back to Australia after serving nearly 2 decades in prison for drug trafficking. However, their return was marked by a notable absence of fanfare, as Australian officials emphasized the need for security and respect for diplomatic relations with Indonesia. The families of the men were informed just days prior that their loved ones would be on a commercial flight from Bali, yet they were barred from greeting them upon arrival in Darwin. Instead of a warm reunion, the men were swiftly taken from the plane to a bus, heading directly to the Howard Springs detention facility. This decision, according to sources within the Australian government, was made to honor Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto, who had made the unilateral decision to allow their return. The Australian government was keenly aware of the sensitivities surrounding the release, as many in Indonesia remain uncomfortable with the idea of the convicted drug traffickers being welcomed back. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese did not greet the men at the airport, and officials were determined to avoid any media spectacle that could provoke backlash in Indonesia. The negotiations to bring the Bali Nine members home have spanned years and involved multiple Australian leaders. Previous prime ministers, Scott Morrison and Malcolm Turnbull, had sought assistance from Indonesian officials to facilitate the transfer. However, it was Albanese's bicycle diplomacy during a visit to Indonesia in June 2022 that significantly advanced discussions. During that trip, Albanese made a direct request to then-President Joko Widodo to consider the fate of the prisoners, and he continued to raise the issue in subsequent meetings. The political landscape in Indonesia complicated matters, particularly with the presidential elections approaching. Following Prabowo's victory in March, Albanese and Prabowo met for dinner in Canberra, where the Prime Minister once again broached the topic of the Bali Nine. While the discussions were positive, the decision could not be rushed, as it had to wait until after Prabowo's inauguration on October 24th. Albanese's absence from the inauguration was not seen as a slight by the Indonesian leader, who understood the Prime Minister's commitments in Australia. The careful handling of the situation reflects a broader strategy employed by Albanese's government, which has also been applied in negotiations for the release of other Australians detained abroad, including journalist Cheng Lei in China and economist Sean Turnell in Myanmar. The recent meeting between Albanese and Prabowo at the APEC summit in Lima, Peru, was pivotal in finalizing the arrangements for the Bali Nine's return. Although the Indonesian side was initially hesitant, Prabowo ultimately agreed to allow the transfer, emphasizing clemency and compassion. Albanese's remarks upon the men's return focused not on their freedom but rather on their rehabilitation and reintegration into Australian society, acknowledging the serious offenses they had committed. The Australian government remains committed to a hardline stance on narcotics, aligning with Indonesia's approach. The successful transfer of the Bali Nine members has been a long-awaited outcome for their families, who have endured years of uncertainty. However, the lack of a public celebration and the quick transition to detention reflect the delicate balance that the Australian government has sought to maintain in its diplomatic relations with Indonesia. As the 5 men begin their reintegration process, the focus will remain on accountability and respect for the legal frameworks in both countries. The complexities of international diplomacy underscore the challenges faced when navigating sensitive issues such as these, where compassion must be weighed against public sentiment and political ramifications. That's all for this story. We upload videos every day covering many different subjects, so hit that subscribe button to stay informed. Thanks for watching.